That's the most amazing thing about Afrika Tikkun. You feel at home.
So when I met Afrika Tikkun, I think my life molded in a positive way.
If it wasn't me, being part of the organization, who knows where I would be at this moment, especially looking at the community that I'm from.
Afrika Tikkun opened up a whole lot of things for me. It made me see things differently in terms of focusing on school, getting my academics right.
Afrika Tikkun changed my life.
Tikkun started 30 years ago, and the original founders was Bertie Lubner and Chief Rabbi Harris.
My dad was launching this initiative called My Afrika Tikkun. The challenge really was to say, what could Afrika Tikkun do, My Afrika Tikkun do, that would be a role model perhaps for other organizations. And it was in that sort of stage that I got to experience meetings that he was having with the late Chief Rabbi and the very fiery Anne Harris, his wife, around what were the solutions to critical need in township communities.
And I remember in the early days of the board, there was a lot of uncertainty still about where the organization was going. They were struggling to get the focus of the direction of what they wanted to achieve. It was still evolving.
When I started, it had a soup kitchen. So we had a buggy that we had lunch boxes that were put in the food. So they were delivered from house to house.
And they saw the need there. They saw the children. They saw there was no education. They saw people were living under very difficult and poor circumstances. How can we help them? And they said, well, let's help the families. How can we go into the townships and help the families? What does everyone need? Nutrition, they need food, they need liquid, they need shelter. And so Afrika Tikkun set up some centers. And they said, well, we've set up the centers. Now, what do we do?
We started focusing on various aspects, which was early childhood. We were doing after schools. We were doing kitchen and nutrition. We were doing caregiving work. We spent all this money on these kids. And what's the next step? These kids aren't able to get into the job and into the workplace. So that's when Mark Lubner came, and we started going to career development, which was work readiness, learnerships, and placements.
What Cradle to Career means, it means that young people come into Afrika Tikkun to learn. From there, they graduate and participate in the economy. So they become active citizens.
The concept of Cradle to Career was to say, could we develop competent individuals, be more productive in the working environment that would rely less on the state, productive individuals, add to the economy in ways that enhance productivity, which create more job opportunities, which effectively would build growth into the economy.
I grew up with my grandmother and my other siblings. My granny passed away because she was the one looking after everybody. My mother was in Joburg working, so she couldn't take us in. So we had to stay with neighbors around the community, It wasn't nice, it was very abusive. So at that age, I was a young boy who was forced into a parenthood because now I have this young sister who's 5 years younger than me that I need to look after each and every day. So Luyanda before Afrika Tikkun was someone who didn't have a direction because it was just school, soccer, and back home. I used to play soccer with my friends around the streets of Hebrew. We just wander around. I basically had no directions. So we went to meet this lady at Afrika Tikkun, and then she said, no, you can just bring a lunchbox after school. You will eat here, we'll put food in the lunchbox for you and your sister for the night, and then you basically come every day for that. So when I met Afrika Tikkun, I think my life molded in a positive way. I started focusing more on my education. I started opening up to a lot of things. I enjoyed a whole lot of programs that changed me, and the people there, you know, they make you want to change.
The reality is that when a child is hungry, they can't make the most of the learning opportunities they have. They can't make friends. They can't build social skills. They can't, you know, think in class. They can't work. If we want to make a change in our country and we really drive a difference for the future, our kids can't be hungry.
I happened to have the opportunity to go to one of their events, the Top Achievers Awards, and this young man was narrating a story about the type of background that he comes from, but he had actually achieved, like, you know, distinctions in mathematics and physical science. He had actually gotten 100%. And for me, it was like, wow, this is the impact that this program is having. So it's more than just supporting an education program. It's actually, you know, you're actually changing somebody's life and creating a new opportunity and opening a new door.
But I think with Afrika Tikkun, we found our real partner, and one that we've now had for 20 years, because we could see that the money was going to good use.
Strong partnerships can serve you in times of need. And I remember, you know, just the millions of meals that we were able to get into communities as a result of this partnership.
So Afrika Tikkun, I often say this, has existed because people have enabled us to be their hands and feet. We're one of the best social enterprises in South Africa. We are one of the organizations that create the most jobs, that run the most preschools or early childhood development centers, that run one of the best after-school support programs, etc., holistic programs that look at children end to end as they develop into young adults. We couldn't have done that without partnerships.
I had problems with my father growing up. He was that one person who would come and go as he pleases. So he would come and you think that now you are stable, he's here to provide for you, and then he just ups and goes. That one day you never see him again. You see that we struggle. You know, in townships we struggle a lot, and some of the things we don't talk about. But when I got here, I saw that I'm not the only one who's dealing with this, and we have a safe space. We can come into and relax and talk and relieve ourselves of those deep emotions that are holding us back and are weighing heavy on us. Afrika Tikkun gave me energy, they gave me oomph. This space, it changes you, because you can't be here and be depressed. That never happens. Everyone is happy, everyone will talk to you.
First got involved with Afrika Tikkun, obviously, back nearly 30 years ago, soon after the organization had been formed. And I remember Bertie, we were on a plane actually in Europe. Bertie was telling me about the incredible work that was going on, and about how a young girl had been saved, literally, her life had been saved by the work of Afrika Tikkun. She was an AIDS orphan. And I remember the two of us sitting there with tears rolling down our cheeks, and Bertie said, you know, won't I get involved in the UK to set up a charity here that we could raise funds for the charity in South Africa, which I obviously did gladly. Afrika Tikkun has now become, and has been for the last 20 odd years, the global charity for the Belron organization. And, you know, we've managed to capture the hearts of literally tens of thousands of Belron employees. And so every year they swim, run, walk, do something to raise money for Afrika Tikkun. We bring kids out from South Africa here to the UK, to Germany, to the US, where they tell their stories. And we also make sure that the Belron employees engage with them, help them, mentor them. We've had numerous, we've lost count of the amount of Belron teams, employees who've visited South Africa, who've spent time in the charities, both in Mufuleni, in Orange Farm, in Diepsloot, in Alex, and really got to understand the charity. So it's become a real partnership, I would say, between Belron and Afrika Tikkun, and one that I'm extremely, extremely proud of.
It was a scenario a couple of years ago where I was there on a site visit in Fuleni, and a gogo came up to me. She was at the clinic, she was having her checkups, and she had a newborn grandson. And in conversation, maybe 5 minutes into the conversation, she handed over her grandson to me and said to me, "Please take him. I think he'll have a better life with you." Not really knowing much about me, who I was, where I came from, but understanding that that sense of trust was there because we were in the home we call Afrika Tikkun. And I think that really looks at the systemic issues that exist within the country. It's not because the grandmother didn't love her grandson, it's because she loved her grandson that she thought he would have a better life with an absolute stranger. But Afrika Tikkun created that sense of trust and has that sense of love in its 4 walls in each township.
I was raised by a single parent who used to be a vendor at the same school I attended. My father didn't want to be a father anymore. I did my whole 12 years at the very same school that my mom was selling at. And throughout, my years of childhood, I wasn't raised, from a very privileged background. I recall back then also my mom lost one of my siblings from food poisoning after not being able to afford medication. My very same home didn't have joy, didn't have light, didn't have hope. And as a kid, lacking one of those things, you do not find the sense of living. That's when I came across Afrika Tikkun. And yes, when I first joined Afrika Tikkun, there was the joy, the hope, the light that I've been looking for. And for the very first time, there was a sense of life in me.
The 3 problems we want to solve is unemployment, because if we solve unemployment, we will solve poverty. If we solve poverty, we'll solve inequality. Those are the 3 biggest problems in South Africa. And South Africa's unemployment is still one of the highest in the world. In particular, South Africa's youth unemployment is the highest in the world. Close to 60% of your young, able-bodied individual are sitting at home. Over 3 million young South Africans between the age of 18 to 35 are not in education, employment and training. Many South Africans, particularly children, are still going to bed hungry. If you look at current challenges that we're having, we cannot solve poverty on unemployment and therefore poverty if the economy is not growing. South Africa has not seen, for a very, very long time, growth in the economy, and therefore businesses are under a lot of pressure. And if businesses are under a lot of pressure, they are not creating jobs. And if they are not creating jobs, then we have a high unemployment rate, and in particular, youth unemployment. So how can you say that young people are the leaders of tomorrow? How can you say young people are our future when there is no future for them? They are sitting at home with nothing. They have no future, they have no hope. We're seeing efforts in the right direction, but we've got to do more, because it's not a question of we cannot fail. We dare not fail, because the survival, the sustainability of this country and the continent is dependent on these young people who will one day say, we've had enough.
We've got to come together and realize that we've all got a contribution necessarily to make. And if we honor one another and respect one another mutually, I think we can start to make some material inroads and change the scenario very quickly.
So every single year is a challenge, but what we do is we have to step back and say, hold on, we've got something special. That's why we are the leading NGO in South Africa, I believe, as far as what we do and the amount of impact that we have.
Irrespective of your life circumstances, you can always overcome it with the right attitude. Mandela taught us that. Madiba taught me certainly about being absolutely resolute and never giving up.
One of the first moments in Afrika Tikkun that shook my heart, our first or second alumni day, and I saw hundreds, if not close to 1,000 young people dancing, celebrating who we are and what we're achieving. I saw the movement. When we talk about we want to create a movement for change, I saw it.
My life was stagnant. So coming into Afrika Tikkun, I got the power and the energy to work into building my future.
If it really, really wasn't for them, I don't know, I can't imagine where I would be. Because that was my safe place. That's a place where I went to get away from everything else. That's where, when I was not feeling well, or when the world's against you, that's where I will go and I will find happiness. It's where I learned to forget about what was and let things be and focus on the future, because that's what the place is, such positivity.
Look at the success stories that we've had in the various cohorts that we've had, Naspers Labs has had with Afrika Tikkun. We've had 70, sometimes 80, and of recent up to 90% of our learners graduating and all getting into a variety of work opportunities in the tech and the digital space.
So we're always revisiting what we do. We're always trying to make things better or improve them. But the underlying aspect of everything we do is to make sure that our young people are economically empowered at the end of the day. And really that's the only sustainable future we've got, is in our young people.
We've got to come together and realize that we've all got a contribution to make. We find purpose in our daily lives, and it bonds us in a way together as human beings that kind of makes life really worthwhile.
Looking and taking care of young people, to me, is so fulfilling, because kids come in here. They don't have to worry about, getting something into their stomach. They don't have to worry about that. They come in here, they've got meals, fresh meals, every time they come here, every day. Like, I'm looking at where we start our Cradle to career model, the little ones, they've got 4 meals a day.
If it wasn't me, being part of the organization, who knows where I would be at this moment, especially looking at the community that I'm from.
So the thing that hits me about the students that come from Afrika Tikkun is their confidence. They are exceptionally confident and they are articulate. They own the spaces that they're in. It's despite whatever the external environment is saying.
We really need to make a difference, and if we want to, it's possible. So I challenge the next generation to join me and to join Afrika Tikkun as the catalyst for change in starting a movement towards the world we want to live in.
You just need people who believe in you and who can support you. And so if you see our young people in spelling bee competitions shining, in debates shining, you realize that when we say people have potential, they do. It just takes a group of people to help them shine.